So most people who've owned a Floyd Rose tremolo have had to deal with the dreaded arm wiggle, and that's what's happening here. Is the arm is moving here, and it makes it hard to do subtle tremolo effects because you're always fighting this play in the arm. So I'm going to show you a couple of ways to get around this. Most of the stuff's available online, but I thought I should give you like a visual idea. One of them involves an Allen key. One of them involves plumber's tape or Teflon tape. And one is something you may or may not have seen or heard of before. It's the original Floyd Rose tremolo arm assembly. And it works on a whole different principle than they're using currently. It's got a bunch of washers here. It's got this weird nut in the bottom with a nut with a slot cut into it. So we'll get into all that in a minute or two, but first we'll go through some other stuff. So just going over this really quick, most people know that there's a bar in here. There's threads on here, and that goes in there. And what's supposed to happen is the more you tighten this thing down, the more it affects the tension this way on the arm. So you can tie it right down so that even when you're in the playing position, it'll stay right where you leave it. You can set it loose, kind of like this, so that it just flops around on its own, or you go somewhere in between. Most people kind of like it so that it falls right there, just under gravity. You can pick it up and use it, and then it'll just drop there alone under gravity again. That's really hard to do, just to get the right amount of tension in this thing, and there's not really much you can do about that. So anyways, if you have this wiggle, one of the easiest solutions is actually one of the easiest things to diagnose too. What you'd want to do is tie the whole thing down as tight as you can here, and if you still feel wiggling, like you can still hear it going click, 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 then the problem is just something probably really simple. And I have another arm assembly here. You may or may not be surprised to know that that piece in here in the trim is actually removable. So the piece with the threads right here is actually this piece here. I'm trying to get this on camera. And it's black here, so it's kind of hard to see. But anyways, and this piece is actually two pieces. I guess technically three if you want to count the screw. So this part with the threads feeds in from the top, and then this part feeds up from the bottom, and you tie it all together with this hex nut at the bottom. Now, what often happens is this hex nut just gets loose, this stupid little thing right here. So getting to that is fairly easy. You would just take the back cover off the guitar where the trim is, and you should be able to see that screw up inside there. And you'll need a long Allen wrench, something probably like this length, and you can actually just stick that up there. Be careful when you're tying up if the trim is still on and you want to do it with the trim on. There's knife edges here on the pivot points, and you can damage them if you're putting all kinds of weird tension on them. So just try to be careful, and you can actually stick that up there and see if it's tight or not. And if that tightens it up, then that solves your problem. Then that's a nice easy fix. Now, some of the main reasons why these arms wiggle, I find, is the machining between this part and the hole in there just isn't tight enough. To me, I think it should be within a couple of thousandths of an inch. And there's obviously a lot more than that because there's a lot of play between these two. And this is a genuine Floyd Rose too, so the cheap ones can be even worse. And also the machining between the threads inside here and the threads here isn't tight enough either, and there's too much play between the threads, and I find that doesn't help either. But what happens often because of that is as you if you get this not just the right tightness where you want it, what happens is the arm will go away and back a couple times, and that'll be enough to kind of loosen this, and then the next thing you know, you're back to a free swinging arm and a lot of play. So the way to solve that is with plumber's tape or Teflon tape, and it's you can get this at any hardware store, and it only costs about $1 for a fairly large roll. It's very thin, and it'll fold up on itself, and it's very hard to work with when you're a klutz like me. And it's even worse when you have a camera on you and you're trying to get it right. And you're trying to do this for the, I don't know, third or fourth take in a row, and it won't go on. Anyways, what you do is you start wrapping it around. Just make sure you always go around the place you started, and then just pull tight. That one wasn't too bad. And you may go around the hole there a bit, so you just put something in there. So then, Now the threads have a little bit of something to bite into, and there's less play between the threads. And this actually works pretty well. You can feel it right away that it's a little bit harder to turn, and it'll keep the bar just where you want it. And the motion of the bar going like this will not loosen the nut now, and it'll stay there longer. And this actually works quite well. The main problem, of course, with this is it's temporary. And what happens is you have to take the bar off to put the guitar in your case. So 2 or maybe 3 times of unscrewing and unscrewing, and you've kind of worn out the tape already, and you're going to have to do it again. And so that gets old pretty quick. That's the only real problem with this solution. Just on a quick note, if you the EVH Wolfgang, which is what this guitar is, the case that comes with it actually lets you keep the arm on in the case. There's a cutout in the foam on top, and it actually lets you put the guitar in the case with the arm attached, which is kind of a cool solution. Of course, the other thing you can do is just go online and get a whole new arm and assembly. This is especially true if you have one of the licensed Floyd Roses. You might want to move up to a genuine arm and assembly. It'll make a big difference usually. Or even if your old one is kind of worn out. I have had luck with putting one of these in an Ibanez trem, but it was the original Ibanez Edge. I don't think this would fit in all of them, and don't hold me to that, and I'm not responsible if you buy the wrong thing. But anyways, Ibanez has a pretty cool system too for doing this. So anyways, yeah, look for a genuine Floyd Rose or Schaller, and it'll probably be a step up if you have a licensed tremolo. I know I had a Jackson one time, and I found this just to be a little bit beefier than the Jackson tremolos. And of course, as promised, here's the original Floyd Rose tremolo assembly. Now, my apologies for not being able to get up closer, but my webcam just doesn't focus any closer than this, and even then it's a bit out of focus. So this is the original Floyd Rose trem that came on the original back in the early 1980s. It works on a whole different system. It almost feeds in like a traditional, actually does feed in like a traditional Fender. It's got the threads right here on the bar, and that feeds down to there. But it works on a slightly different principle, and I'll get to the arm in a second. This assembly, again, is in 2 pieces. It's got 4 washers, 2 metal ones in the middle, and 2 Teflon ones that are white along the outside. So you'd put 1 metal one and 1 white one on top. From underneath, you would put the other metal one. And this one has a slight notch or a thing sticking out of the washer, and that fits in a notch on the threads, so this washer can't actually turn while it's on there. And then you have the other Teflon. Now this weird nut that I was talking about earlier actually has a slot cut into it. I don't know if you can see it there. What they do is they cut this slot, and then they scrunch these pieces together slightly. And what happens is when you try to turn that to put that nut on there, eventually you'll get to that spot where it's scrunched together, and you can't turn it by hand, but you can easily turn it with a wrench. And as you turn it, it stays. It gets just enough of tension in there to hold it on the threads exactly where you leave it. It almost works like a lock washer. And once you find the spot where you like it, so that it spins just the right amount, whether you want it to spin or a lot or a little, and it pretty much stays there. And so this whole assembly here, the top and the bottom, it moves together as one, and it just rotates on these white Teflon washers. And the arm technically actually doesn't come into play at all, because what happens with a Fender arm that threads the same way is this part doesn't move, and the arm just kind of, the threads on the arms will sway back and forth. But with this, what you do is you actually tie it right down, and the top part is actually a nut also. So you would use the wrench and just give this a little bit of a snug, so that's nice and tight in there. And then the arm just becomes part of this whole assembly, and the whole thing, all of this just pivots on these 2 washers. This is really a cool feature and a cool system, because the arm can swivel exactly as much as you want it to this way, and you don't get any play this way, or very, very, very little play this way. And it works works really well. It's a little finicky to set it up originally. Takes a little bit of tweaking with the wrenches, but once you get it the way you like it, it works quite well. Now, it does mean that you have to take a wrench to undo your arm, usually every time you want to put it in the case. But I find that's a reasonable trade-off to how well this thing works. And this you can still get these online from Floyd Rose. You can get them on eBay. You can get them at a few different places online. They're usually called the original old-style Floyd Rose tremolo arm assembly, and they cost just about the same as the current ones. So actually, I bought both of these online last time. Just I wanted to try this one. So, anyways, worthwhile investment, worth trying if you have an original Floyd Rose.